Fam Elected Ghost. We interview artists and actors and musicians. And we have Jess Davis from New York City. And you're an
Yay.
actor, activist, and model, and you do all kinds of interesting things. You have your own clothing line.
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to talk to you again. We've talked to you several times in the
Yes.
last couple of years.
Yeah.
And want to see what you're doing now in this kind of new age of the pandemic. I've seen what you've been doing on your Instagram. You've been doing a lot of activism. Maybe
Yes.
you want to talk about all the different things you've been doing since the last time we talked.
Yeah, I mean, recently in terms of like within the last like 6-7 months, I've been doing a lot of Black Lives Matter activism / organizing, community organizing, since the murder of George Floyd. Just, prior to that, people who have been murdered and suffered abuse by the hands of police in the Black and brown communities. I've been very vocal about it in some instances, and I just found that this was a time to really take it up a notch and do more than just vocalize, but be present in a physical way. And that manifested as being an activist, and doing a lot of work internally with the Black and brown community in New York and specifically in Brooklyn. So that's
Yeah.
my activism in a nutshell.
So I've seen you doing a lot of like on the street protests that I've seen from your Instagram and campaigns about police brutality and defunding the police and the whole thing that's happened to George Floyd. But I know there's a lot of issues in New York itself, but you're doing more than just New York. You're doing it as a whole nationwide effort, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's been geared in New York just because that's where I am locally. Like I live in New York, but prior to being really active in New York recently, I was quarantining with my family in Oregon, and I went to a protest in Salem, Oregon with my brother. So there was, that was the start of my, being more active in this movement. So I did it in Oregon. But in terms of like what I'm doing now, yeah, we want it to reach more of a nationwide level in terms of what we're doing. So my organization that I started with my co-founders, BK for BL, which is Brooklyn for Black Lives. We want to move into the nonprofit space, but prior to us making that decision, we've been working on different policy with and trying to communicate with senators and other city council members about things like qualified immunity, the 1033 program, and the 13th Amendment, which are all things that very much disenfranchise Black and brown communities. So we have connections to with legal aid supporters and with lawyers, and we have people who can draw up bills for us and bill memos for us. So we're working on campaigning our version of a anti-qualified immunity bill that we hope to get passed, or at least get seen within the next like 6 months. So we're working actively on that, and it's that would hopefully reach a nationwide platform, because qualified immunity isn't just in New York; it's all throughout the U.S. So we have initiatives like that are particular to policy and legislative change. And then we also have our community organizing and initiatives, which are mutual aid based. And mutual aid is just, aid that is given to the community by the community, essentially, because we don't rely on any policy makers or city council members to do these things. And an example of that is we recently opened or installed a community fridge in Crown Heights. And the community fridge phenomenon kind of started at I want to say in the beginning of the spring, kind of when COVID was really at the height of its, you know, chaos, right? Or hysteria, I want to
Yeah, New
say.
York
Like,
got hit pretty hard, you know.
yeah, we did. And I had left because my family was worried, and I did want to be close to them. They also have a beach house that I had to myself, so that was nice. So I got to quarantine on the beach, but I wanted to be here, and I really wanted to help people. Like, I had this like need to help.
Mhm.
So when I got back from quarantining and started to be more active in the movement, as it pertains to Black lives, I was like, well, how can we help those who are in the Black and brown communities who were affected by COVID? And one of the ways is to provide food. I mean, everybody has been affected by COVID in terms of resources because people haven't been able to work. So a lot of people are struggling to provide for their families, and in all aspects of having resources. You know, food and clothing and supplies are all pretty much things that people don't have access to right now because they haven't been able to work. So we, Brooklyn for Black Lives, we had late in the summer, we had an August action where did a youth we did a youth workshop, and we provided some materials, and then from there we did a school drive, and we provided a lot, about maybe 100 kids with school supplies in the Brownsville area. And then our next initiative after that was the community fridge. And the community fridge is, like I said, it started kind of at the height of COVID and in the springtime because people weren't able to get food, they didn't have food. And so these fridges, you know, started to pop up. So just provide free food to the community who were in need. And so we decided to take that a step further and really center Black voices around our community fridge in terms of, you know, this is something that the Black community has always struggled with prior to COVID, is having access to healthy food, having access to food aid resources that are not just food stamps, you know. And
Yeah.
so we wanted to provide, you know, there's so many um, there's so many kind of blockades when it comes to giving food to the communities that need it, and there's
It
a,
seems really crazy in the modern world that you have some people in some parties that think food is like, what, it's like a luxury.
mhm,
You
yeah,
know, that they, you know, how they, you know, this country has the most food of like any country in the world, potentially, you know, and then we throw food away instead of giving it to people that need it. There are certain people that think it's more profitable to throw it away than to give it to people that need it.
yeah. I mean, I think it's a lot of understanding how to um, really dismantle our capitalistic belief system when it comes to providing people with resources. Because a lot of the time it's, oh, well, you know, like these people didn't earn it. You know, they're just, you know, they're
Yeah.
leeches, they're parasitic, and you know, they're just lazy. You know, this idea that people are just lazy when they are actually just in need because they haven't had access to resources. They're you know, there's so much that goes into why people don't have access to resources, and it has nothing, really, most of the time, nothing to do with being lazy.
No, people are hardworking. There's
People,
a lot of people, they're in the food deserts
Mhm,
that, you know, there's food deserts, there's equality issues. People are working, you know, all kinds of gig jobs, and they still can't afford good quality food or access to it because of where they live.
mhm,
And then you've got, you know, American farmers in the Midwest throwing away milk, throwing
mhm.
away vegetables
Yeah,
because it will increase their profit.
yeah,
And this seems really obscene to have that going on, and then people thinking that it's good to have this kind of Calvinistic capitalist greed. You know, greed is good. That is actually more just than giving it to somebody that's in need. Is, hopefully with now that we have Biden coming in and Kamala coming in, that we get a change. But even the Democratic Party's had some people, conservatives, that are not as progressive as they need to be on this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a huge proponent of Kamala or Joe Biden, to be honest.
Yeah.
I feel like it's just this same, monster that we've all been fighting for years. It just has a different face. But yeah, they are just as problematic as the Republicans are, because they thrive off a capitalist society, off of, a white power structure, off white supremacy. They are all complicit in that because they're not actively trying to dismantle it. They are just making excuses for it and trying to quote reform. And reform only works for the people that are actually benefiting from it. That's why a lot of a lot of the Democrats and a lot of the Republicans are all on the bandwagon when it comes to reformation, because it doesn't actually fix the problem. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound, So as much as I do appreciate, Trump being out of office, that's wonderful. We're still going to fight the same things we have been fighting with the Democrats in office. Food definitely is a luxury to people, and then but it needs to be seen as a necessity.
Well, I think qualified immunity, and I don't think a lot of people maybe fully understand. Like police unions in some cities have more power than the elected officials.
Yeah.
That a mayor could want to limit the power of the police.
Oh, yeah.
But the police union has more political power through their political action committee.
Oh, yeah.
Than even the governor or the mayor.
And the reason that is because of money. At the end of the day, they are the police are there to protect the capital of the 1%.
Well, even if you go back to slave times, I mean, it's kind of like you had sundown towns.
Yeah,
and you have the sundown town that you couldn't be out. After when we had the end of slavery, right?
Yeah.
They criminalized black people.
Of course.
Right? Because slavery, black people were never thought of being lazy.
Yeah.
During slavery, it's just after the Civil War was lost, they had to criminalize black people. They made it so you could go to jail for loitering if you were just walking around. They could put you back into a prison.
Yeah.
They could get you back on the cotton field, and they started criminalizing blacks to get them back in the same position.
Yeah.
And so the whole police state was kind of designed to kind of get back that kind of overseer control over black people. If you check the history of what happened, it's a lot of that is the continuation of that kind of slavery.
Oh yeah, well that's what the 13th Amendment is. It's a way to continue criminalizing black people legally, and in a way that is very much akin to slavery, because what they do is they specifically target black people to put them in prison, to incarcerate them, and or us rather, as I'm a black woman, and that the 13th Amendment, as much as people know that the 13th Amendment was the abolition of slavery, right? But what people don't realize is that the 13th Amendment does not include those people who are incarcerated. So people who are in prison are subject to the same conditions and the same abuse as people who were slaves.
Yeah, you get free labor. We have like a whole tier of like prison farms.
Of course.
Or prison
well,
factories.
That's because a lot of companies have contracts with prisons for labor. Like you said, it's free labor, and a lot of prisons are privatized, which means they can do what the fuck they want when it comes to their labor and becomes to the people that are incarcerated. The state doesn't have.
Yeah, we're no better than China when it comes to prison factories and farms.
Right, like we need to really change the station of how we facilitate dealing with people who have done something harmful. Right. the illegality of these people's behavior, right, has widely been decided by those who are criminal themselves. And a lot of politicians don't get called out for it because what? They have money. And people who are incarcerated, most of the time, they've been incarcerated for very small things, or they're innocent. A lot of people are incarcerated or not found.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of quotas. I mean, there's a lot of police that have departments that have quotas to criminalize.
Oh yeah.
Certain
Well, that's
groups of
exactly what it
people.
is. They criminalize you and they put you in jail because it helps the cop meet, like you said, a quota for their, and that affects their pension. That affects how much they're getting paid. Just their livelihood in general is affected by that quota. And so the incentive is, if you reach your quota, that you will be in a better standing with your retirement or your pension or whatever, or your fiscal status, as an officer. And so that there's that element. There's the, I need to survive element that the police then play into because they want the money. And then there's also, just the private entity that is whatever corporate conglomerate that is profiting off of it.
Where it's also, they're trying to steal the vote. You know that the African Americans tend to vote, Democratic. Even the Democratic Party doesn't help us.
Yeah.
And so if you're a Republican, you want to limit the success of the Democratic Party by criminalizing Black folks.
Oh yeah.
And then
Well, it's
you
another.
take away their right to vote. You take
Of
away
course.
their right to vote. You make it so some criminals, if they come out in some states, they can't even vote.
Yeah, well, it's another form of it's an extreme form of voter suppression. And that's pretty much that's pretty much what the 13th Amendment, it works in tandem with voter suppression tactics, because you're then, as a felon, as a prisoner, as an inmate, which these are all inflammatory and terrible terms to use to describe someone. And I like to use the term incarcerated person, because it's a lot of people who are incarcerated are not criminals. A lot of these.
Or they were criminalized by a rule. Like if you were criminalized 20 years ago for pot, right? Now pot's legal.
Right.
So why
Or
are you still in
if
jail?
you are someone who is an addict, or someone who has a problem with addiction or a challenge with addiction, you are then incarcerated, but really you should be rehabilitated as opposed to being punished. And a lot of these people that are incarcerated need to be rehabilitated as opposed to punished. And punishing does not work. We are aware of that.
Yeah.
But we do it because it makes us feel comfortable.
Well, I think there's a whole sector of people who are so-called Christians that believe in this kind of punishment. That they want to punish women for having children or having abortions. They want to punish people for taking, illicit substances or being, addicts. But they themselves are addicts. The same people. It's very hypocritical. There's a lot of these people that have all these high and mighty standards, but when you pull back a little bit, a lot of them have the same issues.
Yeah.
And it's very hypocritical, and it's just like they're just trying to show, they're trying to make themselves like standing on the bones of other people. And it's very, I think we've got a really bad example. I mean, one of the worst. I mean, we had a Stalin as a president, a white supremacist, neo-Nazi, feudalistic leaning, the most extreme version of capitalism ever, with Donald Trump. Are you still there? Did I lose you? Oh no. I think I lost the signal. Did I lose the signal? Oh, I think I lost you. Let me try it again. I can't hear you again. I'm going to start it again.